I enjoy the stories you post here, and I would also like to share mine. I hope people enjoy mine too and learn a thing or two from it, just like I did with others. They say the choices you make out of loneliness are the ones that can change the entire direction of your life. Some lead to lessons, others to regrets, and a rare few to both. I didn't think my decision to board a flight to the Philippines would be anything more than a vacation, an escape from the dull cycle of my everyday life. When I look back now, I see that it was the beginning of a story I wish I had known better not to write myself into. The Philippines had always been a distant curiosity for me. Warm beaches, friendly people, nightlife that never seemed to end. I had read about it, watched videos, listened to friends who had been there, and most of them spoke about one thing in hushed tones: the nightlife and the women. I wasn't the kind of man who traveled with the intention of buying companionship, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious. After all, I was middle aged, single, tired of swiping on dating apps that never seemed to lead anywhere. Maybe I just wanted to feel wanted again, even if I had to pay for it. The night I landed in Manila was humid, the kind of sticky heat that clings to your skin no matter how many showers you take. The city streets were alive, jeepneys painted in wild colors crawling along, vendors calling out their wares, neon signs buzzing with promise. I checked into a modest hotel in Malate, a neighborhood well known for its nightlife. My plan was simple: stay a few weeks, see the sights, enjoy myself, then head back to the States with stories to tell and maybe a tan. That first evening, though, curiosity got the better of me. After dropping my bags, I wandered out. I told myself I was just exploring, but if I'm honest, I was drawn to the glowing signs of the bars. Some part of me already knew where I'd end up. I stepped into one of those bars, dim lights, thumping music, laughter floating through cigarette smoke. The moment I entered, eyes turned toward me. Smiles lit up faces. Girls lined the bar in skimpy dresses, their heels clicking against the floor as they moved. I felt like fresh prey in a jungle, and yet it felt strangely flattering. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't invisible. That's when I saw her. She wasn't the loudest in the room, nor the most flamboyant. She was sitting with two other girls, laughing at something, but her eyes kept scanning the room as if looking for someone. When she saw me, she didn't rush over like the others. She waited, and that patience, that quiet confidence pulled me in. When I finally took a seat, she approached with a gentle smile. "Good evening, sir," she said softly. Her voice carried a mix of shyness and practiced charm. "First time here?" I nodded, ordered a drink, and soon we were talking. Her English was good, better than I expected. And though the conversation began with the usual small talk, there was something about her that felt genuine. Not forced, not transactional, or maybe I just wanted to believe it wasn't. Her name was Maria. She was 26, slender, with long dark hair that shimmered under the dim bar lights. She laughed easily but not cheaply, and when she listened, she tilted her head in a way that made me feel as though my words mattered. After a few drinks, she asked if I wanted company for the night. I hesitated, but only for a moment. I was already drawn in. I said yes. Back at the hotel, what struck me wasn't just the sex. It was how she made me feel. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't cold, it wasn't the kind of mechanical service you'd imagine. She made it feel like she wanted to be there, like it was me she had chosen. And for a lonely man far from home, that illusion was intoxicating. Afterward, we lay in bed talking, and that's when the real story began to unfold. I asked her casually at first why she worked at the bar. She hesitated, her smile faltering, then sighed. "There are not many choices here," she admitted. "Unless you are very educated or your family already has money, you cannot get a good job. And I have family. My parents, my brothers and sisters. I am the eldest." Her words carried a weight I hadn't anticipated. She told me she had 4 siblings, all still in school, and parents who were struggling. "We live in the province, very hard life. My father cannot work much anymore, and my mother, she is the one who told me maybe I should try this." In the bar, you can earn more in one night than in a whole week working in a store. Her eyes softened, almost ashamed. She said, at least here, I can help all of them. I remember lying there, looking at her, torn between pity and admiration. Pity for her situation, admiration for the quiet strength it took to sacrifice her own dignity for her family. It struck me that she wasn't some reckless party girl. She was a daughter, a sister, someone carrying a burden she never asked for. That night, I promised her something I had no business promising, that maybe I could help her. You don't belong here, I told her. You deserve more. You deserve a better life. She looked at me skeptically, as if she'd heard those words before from men who only meant them for the moment. But I insisted. Something inside me wanted to save her, to be the man who pulled her out of this life. The days that followed blurred into a kind of whirlwind. I kept seeing her. I stopped going to other bars, stopped looking at other women. She became the reason I extended my stay. We went out during the day. Quiet walks, meals at small restaurants, visits to malls where she held my hand shyly as though unsure she was allowed. At night, we talked more. Each time she let me see more of her story, and each time I grew more convinced that I had to change her life. The thought of marriage wasn't immediate, but the seed was planted quickly. Every man wants to feel needed, and in her eyes I saw both need and gratitude. That was enough for me. By the end of that trip, I had made up my mind. I wasn't just going to be another foreigner passing through her life. I was going to be the one who stayed. I was going to be the one who lifted her out of that world. And in my mind, I believed she wanted the same thing. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't know, was that saving someone isn't always the same as helping them. Sometimes they don't want to be saved. When I boarded my return flight to the States after that first trip, I already knew I wasn't done with her. Most vacations end at the airport, but mine was only beginning. The memory of Maria's smile, the softness of her voice, and the story she had entrusted me with wouldn't leave me. Back in my quiet apartment in the U.S., surrounded by the same dull walls and routines I had been living in for years, I realized how much life I had felt during those weeks in Manila. We messaged every day. The time difference meant I would often wake to her, "Good morning, love," texts, even though it was nearly midnight in the Philippines. She'd send me photos, sometimes of her younger siblings in their school uniforms, sometimes of the meals she cooked for her parents when she went back to the province on her day off. She never asked for money directly, but the subtext was always there. Her struggles were real, and I couldn't ignore them. It was in those weeks of constant contact that the idea of marriage started to feel less like a crazy fantasy and more like the logical next step. I wanted to take her out of the bars, out of that cycle. She deserved a life where she wasn't sacrificing herself every night for survival. And selfishly, I wanted her in my life. Permanently. On my second trip back to Manila, I asked her to marry me. It wasn't some grand Hollywood gesture. We were sitting in a small cafe inside Robinson's Mall, sipping iced coffee while a pop song played too loudly in the background. She had been talking about her siblings' tuition fees when I interrupted her, fumbling with my words. "Maria," I said, my palms sweating. "Why don't we just get married? That way I can bring you to the States, and you won't have to do this anymore." For a moment, she just stared at me. Her eyes widened, then softened, and finally filled with tears. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "You don't have to?" "I want to," I told her firmly, and in that moment, I meant every word. She nodded, almost in disbelief, then leaned across the small table to hug me tightly. "Thank you," she murmured. "You don't know how much this means." Getting married in the Philippines wasn't simple. Foreigners need to secure a certificate of legal capacity to contract marriage from their embassy. I remember making the trip to the U.S. Embassy in Manila, lining up with other expats, filling out forms, swearing under oath that I was free to marry. Then came the paperwork with the local civil registrar, the required seminar on family planning, a standard for Filipino couples, and finally setting a date. We had a modest civil wedding at a local city hall. Maria wore a cream-colored dress she had borrowed from a cousin. I wore a plain suit, already wrinkled in the humid air. There were no grand decorations, no fancy reception, just her family, a few friends, and the two of us signing papers that would change the course of our lives. Her mother hugged me afterward, whispering, "Salamat," thank you, over and over. Her father, quiet and stoic, shook my hand firmly. Her siblings giggled, snapping photos on their phones. Maria looked radiant, her eyes brimming with hope. And me? I felt like a savior. Marriage in the Philippines was only the beginning. The real challenge was bringing her to the United States legally. I dove into research and learned the process was called the CR1 spouse visa, conditional resident, since we had been married less than 2 years. The first step was filing the I-130 petition for alien relative with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS. That form alone took hours to complete, gathering every detail of our relationship, our photos together, receipts from our travels, screenshots of our chat history, copies of our wedding certificate. They wanted proof that our marriage was real, not just a transaction. After filing, there was the waiting, months of silence punctuated only by the occasional letter or email update. During that time, I visited Maria twice more, each trip solidifying my resolve. Once the petition was approved, it moved to the National Visa Center, NVC, for further processing. That meant paying fees, submitting financial documents to prove I could support her, the affidavit of support, Form 864, and preparing more evidence of our bona fide marriage. I had to show my tax returns, bank statements, pay stubs, all to prove I wouldn't let her become a public charge. Then came the medical exam. Maria had to undergo a full checkup at a U.S. Embassy-approved clinic in Manila, complete with chest x-rays, blood tests, and vaccinations. She was nervous about it, but passed without issue. Finally, the most stressful part, the embassy interview. I remember calling her the night before, coaching her through possible questions. When did you meet your husband? What does he do for work? How do you keep in touch? What are his parents' names? The officers wanted to make sure she wasn't just marrying me for a visa. Maria was terrified, but when the day came, she aced it. She told me afterward that the officer barely asked 5 questions before approving her. When she sent me a photo of her passport with the visa stamped inside, I felt like we had climbed a mountain together. All the waiting, the paperwork, the stress, it was worth it. The day she landed at JFK, I was there waiting, nervously pacing in the arrivals hall. When she finally walked through the sliding doors, clutching a small suitcase, I felt a rush of emotion I hadn't experienced in years. She looked overwhelmed, her eyes darting at the crowds, the announcements in English, the sheer size of everything. When she saw me, her face lit up. She ran into my arms, and for a brief moment, it felt like the perfect ending to our story. Except, of course, it wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one I never could have anticipated. At first, things were good. I took her shopping for warmer clothes since the New York winter was brutal compared to Manila's tropical heat. We explored the city together, visited Times Square, Central Park, and even rode the Staten Island ferry just to see the Statue of Liberty. She laughed easily, held my hand tightly, and every night thanked me for bringing her to this new life. But beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Maria didn't talk much about finding a job, though I gently encouraged her. She'd shrug and say, "Soon, love. Let me rest first. Everything is so new." And I believed her. After all, she had just moved halfway across the world. Who wouldn't need time to adjust? What I didn't realize then was that while I thought I had rescued her from her old life, Maria wasn't ready, or maybe wasn't willing to leave it behind. The first few weeks after Maria arrived in the States felt like a honeymoon. Everything was new to her. Subway rides, American grocery stores, even the way strangers would say, "Excuse me," when passing by. She'd cling to my arm in crowded spaces, her eyes wide with curiosity. At home, she tried cooking Filipino dishes, filling the apartment with the smell of garlic, soy sauce, and vinegar. I remember her laughing the first time she tasted American breakfast cereal, saying it was too sweet like candy. For me, those moments felt like confirmation that I had done the right thing. I had taken a woman from a life of hardship and given her a chance at something better. Every night when she curled up against me and whispered, "Thank you, love," I felt needed, and that was a powerful thing for a man who had spent too many years alone. But reality doesn't take long to creep in. After the initial excitement, I began to talk more seriously about her finding work. Not because I wanted to push her, but because I believed it would help her adjust. Even just something small, I told her one evening. A cashier job, a server at a restaurant, anything to start with. It will help you meet people, practice your English more. She smiled faintly and nodded. Yes, love, I'll look. Maybe next week. Weeks turned into months. Every time I brought it up, she had a new excuse. I don't know where to start, or I'm scared my English is not good enough, or I don't want to stress you. You already work so hard, love. Let me take care of the house. It was hard to argue with that last one. I'd come home from work to find the apartment spotless, dinner ready, candles lit. She was affectionate, attentive, always eager to please. A part of me thought, what's the rush? Maybe she really just needed time. But then little things began to change. She started going out more. At first, she said it was just to explore the city or meet some new friend she had connected with through a Filipino community group. I wanted her to feel independent, so I encouraged it. But she never wanted me to come along. Just girl time, she'd say with a quick kiss on my cheek. Don't worry, love. I'll be back soon. The soon stretched later and later into the night. Sometimes midnight, sometimes 1 or 2 in the morning. I asked once if she felt safe being out that late. She laughed and said, "Of course. New York is busy all the time, and I don't want to disturb you." I told myself not to overthink it. She was young, adjusting, making friends. But deep down, unease was planting roots. Then came the purchases. Maria, who once counted every peso in the Philippines, suddenly had expensive dresses, designer handbags, perfumes I knew didn't come cheap. At first, I assumed she was just dipping into the allowance I gave her for personal expenses. But the numbers didn't add up. I wasn't controlling about money, but I knew what I earned and what I spent. I hadn't given her enough to buy a $1,200 handbag. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off. Oh, it was on sale. My friend helped me get a discount. She said it so casually, so convincingly that I let it slide. But more handbags followed. More shoes, jewelry, always with a new excuse. Gift from a friend. Discount from a store. Don't worry, love. I don't want you to stress about it. That phrase, "don't worry, love," started to feel like a shield she used against my questions. The first real crack came one night when she left her phone on the couch while she showered. Normally, I respected her privacy, but a notification popped up, a message preview that froze me in place. It was a photo. Not explicit, but suggestive enough. A mirror selfie of a woman in lingerie, face cropped out. The caption read, "You like this, baby?" My heart pounded. I told myself it couldn't be her. Maybe a spam message, maybe a mistake. I picked up the phone, hands trembling, and scrolled through. There were conversations, flirty, explicit, filled with emojis and pet names. Photos sent back and forth. None of the pictures showed her face, but the body, the tattoos, the little birthmark on her hip. I knew them. I knew her. I put the phone down before she came out. I couldn't confront her yet. A part of me clung to denial. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe there was an explanation. But in my gut, I knew. It wasn't until a week later that everything came to a head. She came home late again, carrying shopping bags with another designer label. I sat her down at the table. "Maria," I said carefully, "where is all this money coming from?" She blinked at me innocently. "What do you mean, love?" "I told you, my friends help me. I don't want you to be stressed." "No," I pressed. "Maria, I need the truth. Are you working? And if so, what kind of work?" For a long moment, she was silent. Then she set the bags down and looked me in the eyes. There was no shame, no hesitation, only blunt honesty. Love, in the Philippines, I was making more money in one night than most people make in a month. You know that. Here, it's even better. Do you know how much a client pays here? You think I will find a job in a store that gives me that? Never. Her words cut deeper than any betrayal could. She wasn't apologizing, she wasn't denying, she was justifying. I know you did so much for me, she continued, her voice calm, almost tender. That's why I didn't want you to worry. But this is who I am, this is what I know, and I'm good at it. I stared at her, struggling to breathe. So, all this time, you've been prostituting yourself? Here? She didn't flinch. Yes, and I'm not sorry, because now I can help my family even more, and I can live the life I want. That was the moment something inside me broke. After that conversation, we were two strangers living under the same roof. I couldn't look at her without feeling anger, betrayal, humiliation. She, on the other hand, seemed unbothered. If anything, she carried herself with more confidence, more independence. She no longer tried to hide her late nights or her purchases. Within a month, she told me she was moving out. Don't be sad, love, she said with a soft smile. You gave me everything I needed, but I don't want to live by your rules. I want to live free. And just like that, she left with her bags, her dresses, her perfume, her phone full of clients who would pay her more than I ever could. The day Maria left our apartment was one of the quietest days of my life. There were no arguments, no screaming, no thrown dishes or slammed doors. Just silence. She calmly packed her things while I sat on the couch, numb. I wanted to rage, to demand answers, to beg her to stay, but the truth was she had already left me long before that day. She walked out with 2 suitcases, a designer purse slung over her shoulder, and a smile that wasn't cruel but wasn't apologetic either. Take care, love, she said gently, as if she were wishing me well after a casual dinner, not ending a marriage. And then she was gone. I sat there for hours afterward, staring at the empty space where her shoes once lined the wall, where her laughter used to fill the room. The apartment felt bigger, but emptier. For the first time, I realized just how alone I had been, even when she was beside me. Filing for divorce wasn't complicated, but it was painful. Because we had been married less than 2 years, she was still on a conditional green card. That gave me some leverage. I could report the marriage as fraudulent, which might have jeopardized her residency. Friends told me I should. They said, she used you. Don't let her get away with it. But when I sat down with the paperwork, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe, deep down, I still cared. Whatever the reason, I filed for a no-fault divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. I gave her the clean break she seemed to want so badly. The court date was uneventful. She didn't even show up in person, just signed documents through her lawyer. Within weeks, the marriage that had taken months of planning and thousands of dollars to create was dissolved with a few signatures and a stamp. I thought I'd feel relief, but instead I felt hollow. In the months that followed, I tried to pick up the pieces of my life. I went to work, came home, cooked for one, and sat in silence. Friends checked in, some offering sympathy, others thinly veiled "I told you so" remarks. I brushed them off, but the truth was, I felt like a fool. I had convinced myself I was saving Maria, that I was giving her a life she could never have dreamed of. Instead, she had taken what she needed and moved on without a backward glance. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll through social media, half hoping not to find her, half hoping I would. And when I did, it was always the same. Photos of her in glamorous dresses, posing in expensive restaurants, sipping champagne, her arm around men twice her age but dressed in wealth. She looked radiant, confident, untouchable. She wasn't the same girl I met in that smoky bar in Manila. Or maybe she had always been this person and I just refused to see it. The last real conversation we had before she left still played in my mind. You don't understand, she had said, her voice calm but firm. In the Philippines, I was already doing this. Here, I can make 10 times more. You think I want to work in a store, 8 hours a day for minimum wage? Number, I can make in one night what that job pays in a month. Why would I give that up? At the time, her words had felt like daggers. But as the months went on, I began to realize they were more than just her justification. They were a kind of truth, ugly as it was. Maria wasn't wrong. Prostitution, whether we admit it or not, thrives because it pays more than most legitimate jobs ever could. In Manila, she had been sending money home that kept her siblings in school. In New York, she was wearing clothes I couldn't afford even with a steady job, and she wasn't alone. The more I looked, the more I noticed. Escorts advertised online, in plain sight. Men with money, lonely men, desperate men, they all paid. And women like Maria knew exactly how to capitalize on it. I wanted to judge her, to call her immoral, ungrateful, even heartless. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the uncomfortable truth. She was playing a game where the rules favored her, and I had been naive enough to think love could rewrite those rules. Sometimes I sit back and wonder, did she ever love me? Or was I just a stepping stone, a visa, a bank account, a way out of the Philippines? I'll never truly know. Maybe there were moments when she cared, moments when her laughter was real, when her touch was more than just performance. But even if those moments existed, they weren't enough to hold her. I've learned something through all this. Saving someone isn't the same as loving them. You can't drag someone out of a life they don't want to leave. You can offer them the world, but if what they want is something else, something darker, faster, more profitable, they'll take it, even if it means walking away from you. When I tell this story, people always ask me if I regret it. The answer is complicated. I regret the heartbreak, the betrayal, the money lost. But I don't regret meeting her. Because in Maria, I saw the raw edges of survival, the desperate choices people make when life corners them. And I realized that what she chose, the life she embraced, wasn't just about her. It was about a system that makes it easier to sell your body than to earn a living wage. A system that exists not just in the Philippines, but here in America too. So when people ask me why there are so many prostitutes in the US, I tell them the truth Maria taught me, whether she meant to or not. Because they can. Because it pays. Because for many, it offers a life that no respectable job ever will. That's the bitter reality. And I learned it the hard way, through a woman I once thought I could save.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more amazing content.